Google Wi-Fi, a quirky three-piece mesh router system, was Google's initial venture into mesh networking in 2016. You connect one Google Wi-Fi device to your modem and then disperse the others across your home to transmit a fast Wi-Fi signal from room to room, just like other mesh routers. The $300 router performed admirably in tests and immediately became one of CNET's top recommended routers. After that, Google released a follow-up at the end of 2019. Instead of labeling the system Google Wi-Fi 2, Google dubbed it Nest Wifi, a nod to the company's efforts to rebrand the Google Home Mini Smart Speaker and Google Home Hub Smart Display as the Nest Mini and Nest Hub, respectively. But don't be fooled into thinking it's the same system disguised as something else. Google Wi-Fi and Nest Wi-Fi have some important distinctions, despite the fact that they both make the same fundamental pitch: stable, reliable, whole home Wi-Fi. And, because both are now accessible from major retailers, you'll want to make sure you know the differences before investing. Let's go over them one by one. Nesty has come up with a fresh design. Google Wi-Fi and Nest Wi-Fi both have stout, cylindrical devices that pair wirelessly, but that doesn't mean Google didn't dress things up for version 2. To begin with, Nest Wi-Fi softened the edges and eliminated the blue LED lights to offer the system a more delicate appearance that will better blend into your home's decor, and yes, they look a lot like marshmallows. The range-extending Nest Wi-Fi points come in 3 colors: white, blue, or coral, whereas the Nest Wi-Fi router is only available in white. Another significant hardware difference arises as a result of this. Each gadget connected to Google Wi-Fi is identical. You can use any of them as a router by connecting them to your modem, and you can use them as range extenders in different rooms of your house. Nest Wi-Fi, on the other hand, has a dedicated router and smaller, separate range extenders, the Nest Wi-Fi points. Each Google Wi-Fi device has an Ethernet WAN port as well as an Ethernet LAN port. This allows you to connect to any Google Wi-Fi device in your home via a direct wired connection, as well as wire your Google Wi-Fi devices together for faster rates. The same 2 Ethernet jacks are found on the Nest Wi-Fi router, however there are none on the Nest Wi-Fi points. Oh, and each of those Nest Wi-Fi points has a microphone and a speaker, according to Google. This allows you to use smart speakers while still having access to the Google Assistant's full intelligence via voice commands. You can also ask the Google Assistant to do a brief speed test for your network or pause Wi-Fi for a device or group of devices, in addition to the usual voice assistant mainstays like asking for the weather, playing music, and turning smart home devices on and off. Google also included touch controls on the top of each point, allowing you to pause or adjust the volume with a single tap. You can also turn off the microphone by flipping a physical switch if you don't want to use voice controls at all. Specifications and speeds. Google Wi-Fi and Nest Wi-Fi have differing hardware capabilities due to the 3-year development gap. For starters, Google Wi-Fi is an AC 1200 mesh system, which means its 2.4 and 5 GHz bands have a combined top speed of 1200 megabits per second. With Nest Wi-Fi, that speed rating climbs to AC 2200, giving you a more powerful access point on both the 2.4 and 5 GHz bands. Just keep in mind that your router can only connect to one band at a time. However, Google Wi-Fi and Nest Wi-Fi will automatically switch between the two to maximize speed and signal strength. When we evaluated both methods, the band steering worked exceptionally well, thus this appears to be one of Google's strong points. Those AC 1200 and AC 2200 speed ratings, like all routers, are based on optimized, lab-based performance testing that ignore factors like distance, obstructions, and interference, so your actual top speeds will be far lower. We measured high wireless transfer rates of 451 megabits per second at close range and 201 megabits per second at a distance of 75 feet in our own lab. These numbers leap to 612 and 431 megabits per second with the Nest Wi-Fi, which is amazing for an AC mesh router. That AC indicates that both Google Wi-Fi and Nest Wi-Fi support Wi-Fi 5, 802.11 acres, which has been the industry standard for several years. Wi-Fi 6, 802.11ax, a new, faster ax version of Wi-Fi, was recently released last year, but Google decided not to support it with Nest Wi-Fi. With Nest Wi-Fi, Google did update the antennas, bringing it up to a 4x4 configuration capable of more robust simultaneous MU-MIMO broadcasts than Google Wi-Fi's 2x2. Google Wi-Fi does not support the latest WPA3 encryption standards, while Nest Wi-Fi does. Controls in the app. Google Wi-Fi comes with its own dedicated control software that walks you through the setup process and provides basic controls. It doesn't have as many complex functions as a gaming router, so it's not suitable for those who want a lot of advanced network options at their fingertips. Nest Wi-Fi's controls have been moved to the Google Home app, allowing you to operate your network alongside Google Assistant smart speakers and other compatible smart home devices. You can conduct a quick speed test from the app, and you can group devices together to rapidly turn their Wi-Fi connectivity on and off, in addition to parental controls and other user-friendly features. Although it's more streamlined and easier than the options in the original Google Wi-Fi app, you can still use those controls with Nest Wi-Fi if you like. Google Wi-Fi was one of the most popular mesh systems in recent years, and it's still available from some stores. You might be tempted to buy it if you see it on the shelf and read the positive reviews online. The biggest argument for Google Wi-Fi right now is that it is fully backwards compatible with Nest Wi-Fi. If you currently have a Nest Wi-Fi router and want to extend its range to a backroom in your home, you can save some money by using a Google Wi-Fi point rather than a Nest Wi-Fi point. It won't be as fast, but it will save you money, and it may be the best option if you don't want to use the Google Assistant voice controls that come with Nest Wi-Fi points. Aside from that, I'd advise most people to stick with Nest Wi-Fi devices for a fully functional network. Take a look at our Google Wi-Fi review. For practically everyone, I believe the new Nest Wi-Fi mesh technology is far superior. It's a little more expensive than Google Wi-Fi right now, but not by much, and for the extra cash, you get higher peak speeds, better connections, and access to the most up-to-date encryption standards, which is ideal for future-proofing. The lack of Wi-Fi 6 support is frustrating, but not quite as bad as you might imagine, especially if you're waiting for Wi-Fi 6E routers to arrive in 2021. Take a look at our Nest Wi-Fi review.